Okay, I think that's a good amount of feedback which we can improve, and it definitely helps for other projects. So thank you for that. And we spent almost half a meeting, so we can probably move to the next set of questions. And that will be our backlog for the phase 2. You probably have seen this document, and we discussed almost all questions with you before. So do we need to go through this list, or are you already aware what is it about?
The only ones that look new to me is the patch and the import-export. But patch, I can probably understand what that is from the title, but maybe import-export, I'm not sure. I know what that is.
It's scary, yeah, then maybe we will start from the first one together, and all others, okay.
So import-export, there were discussion in the Slack channel about import-export itself, that now we have this perform on the bulk APIs. Why don't we refactor our existing import-export, and instead of having direct database requests to the when you parse the import document, do the asynchronous calls to the web API, and for every item in the import document create some message in the queue, and then process them asynchronously. And then time for import-export from the file of, let's say, million products, it will depend on how many consumers you can put to listen that queue, and like how can you parallelize the work of processing the queue of million records. So
this is a good idea.
Yeah, it's a question of refactoring of existing import-export, and actually it's a question of the future of import-export. Can it live in current way when we have direct database calls? Probably it can, but at the same time it creates a lot of issues, like it's inconsistent with current Magento business logic. It's hard to pluginize it, and it always has bugs which we don't see on the regular Magento product side. So the scope of this work will be to take import-export, probably look into the UI, and create another import-export with the same UI, which can take a file of products, it can split that file of products in individual messages, and then using our interfaces which we created, send those messages as a bulk request to the queue.
Would it be a good idea to implement patch support first?
So for the patch support, you mean
because
partial update, right?
Yeah, for import-export, that might be a use case. So I think a lot of the fields that you might have on a product, you might not have in the CSV. What do you think?
So I think in general it makes sense, because then you will be able to, there will not be no requirement to create partial, to create full message, right? Once you save it to the queue. And probably it also correlates with incremental update. Do you want to implement incremental update as well, so that if some item is repeated, you don't need to persist it multiple times?
I think if we implement, yeah, that would probably change how we implement the patch support, wouldn't it?
Also, really depends. I mean, that's a nice features, but it really depends between each other, or can we like do them at the same time?
Well, if we're calculating a hash based on the full data set, we might need to change some of it when we add patch. I'm not sure. For us, incremental isn't that's probably the least of our worries because we calculate that pretty consistently in line. But I'm sure other people need it.
Okay, so you're saying that you first need to implement partial update before we can implement incremental update, because it will be different, like hash will be different for full set of fields or for partial set of fields. Am I correctly understanding?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, can we implement incremental update for full request, and then, like, will it be two different implementations, incremental update for full request and for partial request? Or will it be just reuse it, or will one reuse another?
I would say more reuse, because they're quite similar. Sorry, what do you think?
Yeah, probably, like if we send a patch update for product name and we send a patch update for product SKU, and neither of those requests have changed any data, I would expect that we wouldn't want, you know, if we implement incremental update, that we wouldn't want either request to be applied. Does that sound correct?
Sounds correct to me.
Sounds difficult.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so regarding patch update, let's say we implement patch update first, then we implement import export, then we implement incremental update.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, let me take it back. Is it valuable to implement incremental update for full product, or it's more valuable to implement it for partial product?
Can you give a use case? What do you mean with for full product and for partial?
Mm-hmm. So right now, Web API requires you to send full set of data
Mm-hmm.
when you do product save. And sometimes you want to send just data which changed. For example, you change a quantity and you send just quantity.
All right. Yeah.
So is it valuable to implement incremental update just for full product? I'm trying to understand the dependencies between these two stories.
Well, I have a few questions about the design of it. Do we need to worry about maybe adding a lot of reads to an area that we are trying to optimize for writes?
Mm-hmm. So it means that if you would try to load the data from database first before you write it, it will create additional reads.
Yeah, correct. I'm not sure that it's always worth it.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Because even if we looked at trying to cache all of the product data, then you have problems with consistency as well.
You know, that's different of the use cases, because if you built in some ERP system and you are definitely sure that there will be no duplicates on the import, then you don't need this functionality at all. But if it will be like part of the core, then like you have some useless resource.
Mm-hmm.
What would be easier to implement is a really basic protection against this exact same request being sent twice, but we don't actually know that the database hasn't changed state in that time, in which case it could be valid to send the same request twice. So really we have to look at the data in the database, and maybe we run the risk of more deadlocks.
At the same time, if the data anyway is retrieved somewhere down the product save operation right now, like I think it's worth to check, because probably right now we anyway read some data before we save the product.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, but at the same time, here, if we're talking about the import-export functionality via queuing, then I'm kind of, from experience, sure that the huge amount of the import-export function of import products via CSV data, for example, are mostly sending the same data again and again.
So it means that this incremental update becomes more valuable.
Yeah, in this case, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about the usual API usage, I'm not sure, like maybe 50-50. But if we're talking about CSV import, then I would say that's much more than 50% when it's valuable.
Yeah, I think that it's valid. A lot of our clients will just run the same file like 100 times. So.
Yeah, I mean, they change in one product and the system can usually export the whole batch of products once.
Usually in import-export file, do we have full product state or partial product state?
Usually full.
So does that mean that you would, if you were to go off of a hash, the hash would need to be of the record itself, meaning record in the database rather than the message content or like payload content?
Yeah, I think so. Because like someone, if you run the same file twice, you expect it's going to be applied. But between those two operations, someone could have gone into admin and changed the product name.
Right. So I'm just trying to figure out the goal, right, is to save on the, to avoid the actual time that it takes to process the update by the system. So if you already have a hash of the object in the DB, you compare that with the hash of the would-be object created by the payload. And if they're the same, then you just skip the operation, right? Is that kind of the general idea?
Correct, yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Just not sure, should we store the hash in the database always, or should we generate it on each operation? That's also a question, because we have different endpoints of the product data. This can be API, CSV import. This can be also just product change via the admin area, or new order when PTI is reduced.
Yeah, I think it's back to what we discussed before, that if something happening between imports, we should identify it. So it's not an option to store it in database. You should generate it every time.
Generate it, yeah.
Another question is, what do you do with, what do we do with stock information? Is that something that should affect the hash or no?
Well, I guess if you need to be able to, yeah, it does still need to work every time. But yeah, you could send the same request twice and someone could order the product, and then you would expect that the stock's going to be reapplied. It seems difficult, because the other thing that could affect the hash is like timestamp fields, like updated dates and things. So those would need to be probably excluded.
No, yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
And we might have to do this like on a per entity basis, which seems like.
So regarding this, don't we generate hash just by the fields which are sent in the request? For example, if we send in request something without timestamp, we don't need to take timestamp into account when we try to apply the change.
Well, that's what we were just saying. I thought the general approach was to have the hash of the, sorry, your the hash that you're comparing to is a hash of the object in the database, not of the message. Because if you send whatever, and you have an Excel file, it updates a product. You run it, it updates the product, and then after that, an admin goes in and changes the name. Right. The next time you run the file, you want to actually process that update, and the only way that you would do that is if you compare the payload of the message, that hash, with the hash of the object in the DB, and you find the discrepancy.
Yeah, correct. I mean that when you generate a hash for data from database, you should take into account only those fields which you've seen in the request. Like if there is a name in the request, you will take that name and add it to the hash. If there is no name in the request, anyway, that name will not be changed. So it's not affecting. So will it be faster to generate a hash, or will it be faster to actually perform a write operation?
For me, like my personal opinion would be the complexity and possible quality maybe outweigh the more simple approach of just applying write only. The other thing is, like, for resources like sales ship order B1, those are a payload that describe more of an action.
Can you repeat that? Sales ship order?
Yeah, for those resources that are more like you send a payload that describes an action on a service rather than an entity. Mm-hmm. We would need to, I guess, exclude those from the hashing. It obviously wouldn't be possible. It doesn't map one-to-one. Mm-hmm. Not like a repository.
Okay. So we discussed in details incremental update. So how do you feel? Is it less important than import export and patch?
I would say yes. I mean, I would start with import export functionality or patching functionality before the incremental update. That's a nice feature, nice to have, but we can. I'm not sure that it's like first priority.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds it sounds more complex than anything right now to account for all the different scenarios that it could be kind of invoked and used. So it needs to be really well thought through before we kind of attempt it. But in any case, I agree that patch is probably a little bit more approachable.
Okay, so do you want to discuss this too, or some other item from the roadmap? The one which I'm interested in is this too. New service contracts for multiple entities and group events. But
yeah, those two follow logically kind of the work that we just completed. It's kind of a very natural extension of what we just did, but you guys obviously speak for yourselves.
So one thing I think in terms of what we have completed, improving what's there, I think if we, you guys might have different opinions, so we keen to hear them, but you can store all the status and operation data in Redis. That means that the work that which could be a good thing.
So framework for operations Redis, right?
Yeah, so at the moment we've got no sort of webhook mechanism. So at a minimum, we have to send one request for each async operation to get the status. And assuming it's successful, that's all good. but in most cases, it'll probably be more of a polling manner. And it would be good if that wasn't putting more work on the database than what was there before. Because we could be sending quite a lot of requests, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree here. Just to add a little bit. When I'm prepared for the demo of our presentation, I tried to execute like several thousands of requests at the same second, send them to Magento, and MySQL just went away, just fell down. And that's definitely a big overload for database when you're putting a lot of requests, and I guess the Redis will make this work much better.
Okay, sounds like one of the top. So what else? Is there anything else on the board which you'd like to?
I could just tell you that this number 6 bulk API status sort, which we discussed, I guess, very shortly before merging our usual bulk API. We're already working on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Because generally, I don't think we have to discuss it really too much. I wrote some documentation for it, and it's quite obvious what to do there. It's just one new endpoint for the searching. I would say it will be also done quite fast because it's quite simple work.
Was this the typed responses?
Yeah, generally just a search by the operations, by the statuses or the date and the operation was made. As we discussed it before, the idea was that if I'm doing the big import with million of products, I'm mostly just interested to receive all calls which are failed.
I see. Yeah.
I don't need all others, so it will be nice to make a search by the operation statuses like which are failed and debug only them.
Actually, that reminds me with the status endpoint. This isn't actually even in the roadmap, but one of the things that came up during development that we didn't have time to implement was a status endpoint where we can receive a properly typed response with the original response payload. So at the moment, we have it as a JSON string as part of the status response.
Correct.
But we talked about maybe adding, /status /product /UUI type thing.
Be correct to remember this. I guess we even have somewhere the ticket for that.
Yeah, there is a ticket. It's my bad. I haven't put it in the board. That is important. This one.
In our middleware, we have models for everything Magento. Those get properly deserialized. That would be nice. And then as well.
Okay. So anything else you want to pull back from the board to active discussion? You mentioned webhooks. Are you interested in webhooks?
Webhooks would be good. I think these two issues for like Redis and maybe the endpoint, those seem like some loose ends from what we started on. So it might be good to try and finish those up before we add new features. I don't know what you think.
Okay. Alex, you agree?
Can you give me a short overview? What do you mean with this story?
I'm sorry?
With the webhooks.
Oh, webhooks. So right now we have web API which can accept requests, but there is no way from Magento to notify other systems about what happened inside the system. For example, you can imagine a situation when you save a product and you want to notify third-party systems that some product was updated, and you send actual HTTP request from Magento to third-party system.
Yeah, we had this case for the orders usually. I mean, we're really missing the webhooks for orders placed.
And there are a lot of cases which you can imagine, even bulk API. For example, instead of pulling status, like making request to Magento to get a status every second, you can subscribe to event which notifies you that bulk was processed or bulk failed. And then you can implement logic in your system to handle that request.
Yeah, that sounds very, very good.
Just a side comment, I just had a quick look and it does look like Swagger has support for pullbacks in version 3. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So let me put it to the backlog somewhere here. And actually we have our meeting finished. Do you have time to finish this discussion about prioritization?
Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. So Alex, do you agree that the first 3 items is something we need to finish before we move to the next features?
Stress and point. Yep, I will agree with this. Yeah, I would say, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, and for the new features, what would be relative priority? I mean, what would be the order? Patch update, import export, and webhooks.
I would say the webhooks we can leave for later on. I mean, it's a very nice feature. I'm just not sure that we have to put so many features in one like phase. Because for we not develop the phase 2 like for next year or so. Just to split it on the parts. Maybe we can move webhooks to phase 3. Because import, very nice stuff. And I would also say this patch update and the import export, which I already asked. I'm not sure that we have to do it like one after another. Maybe they have like, they can be done at the same time, like by different guys, by different teams. Because I'm not sure. I mean, they're related to each other, but they're not like, it's not a dependency.
Okay, sounds like a plan for me then. Anyway, we can describe some architectural overview of what should happen there, and that can be even some separate project about how we can implement it. Or if we can get it earlier, we can just start phase 3 with the set of features.
Yep, sure, that's fine.
Cool, okay. So now let's say that this will be our phase 2. So let's go fast through the topics so we understand them. So first of all, status endpoint with properly typed response. We briefly described how it can look like. We can have a request, probably get. Yes, this URL should change. So this should be a request to the status endpoint, followed by the initial request to the Magento Web API path, like V1 products, and then followed by UUID, which should return you the list of entities sent initially to the request and the result of their processing. So it should be, first of all, typed entities, and second, it should have information about result of processing.
Okay, so we probably need to add the bulk one as well to this, don't we? So an array of everything as well.
So that will be async. No, it's not async. It's just status. It will be get request status, and also you need to get request for bulk. Okay. So the response in first case will be one entity. So no more questions about it. We also,
we update also Osweier schema, like being done in scope of this story.
yes, absolutely.
I guess we need the new then, or like we made it with, like the carry made with async.
Can you repeat that? Sorry, I didn't understand what you say about async.
I mean that I guess we need the newsfire schema. So like we have separate from the usual, from the synchronous, asynchronous, and then this one like a status reporting one.
So to me, it sounds like synchronous schema because it will be synchronous request, and it will be typed by the type of operation.
Okay, yeah, good.
Yeah, I think we'll probably end up needing to do more generation on the synchronous one.
Okay, also we discussed the responses, like should it have always 200, or if item is processed, it should have 404. It can be 500 for failed, maybe.
Yeah, I guess so. Like for which are still in progress, where we have no statuses yet, and yeah, not found ones.
Okay. So the next framework for writing key value data. So why I call it framework for writing key value data? We discussed it yesterday with Anton, and he suggested not for like make it abstract enough so that we can substitute different implementations, and it kind of makes sense. For example, if we have an interface which allows you to persist some value by key, then Redis implementation, we will save it to the Redis, database implementation, save it to database. And for current asynchronous operations, the refactoring will be pretty easy. You will just inject this interface instead of making database connection. So right now we inject database resource models and create models and then save them. Instead, we will inject this interface and save data by value, by key, and switching them somewhere either in DI or maybe in configuration will allow us to select where to save.
So one comment would be search criteria would be hard to support with a key value. Maybe we need to make a decision in terms of what's more important, or not sure.
How do we actually update status? So key will be bulk ID and value will be whole set of statuses for all the items? Or
Yes, I think at the moment the status API is just a retrieve by ID, isn't it? But if we want to add that status search endpoint with search criteria, it could be possible, but I think it'll be quite difficult.
can we add tags?
Actually, I'm sorry. Actually, we can use 4K is operation ID and body is operation data, because operation already have bulk UID, which we can use.
Then searching, like search criteria, will be implemented as scanning through all existing operations.
Maybe we can use additional key, what bulk with bulk UID, and body will be operation list ID.
Yeah, I think also it's a question for search, like bulk API status search, if you want to search by date. Can you avoid scanning through all the operations to find item with particular date?
If we will have bulk UID key and operation ID, I think it will be not pretty hard to implement it.
So you will scan just, like you will select all records for bulk API.
Sorry, I was off. My computer just decided that it's enough for him for the day.
Yeah, we're discussing the key value framework and how do we implement bulk API status search if we save data in the Redis.
Okay, got it.
But I think it could be possible with Redis. But maybe not all key value backend.
Yeah, I think it can be kind of in two requests. First, you retrieve bulk, by bulk UID, you retrieve IDs of all operations, and you select all operations and filter them by date.
In the application?
Yes, correct.
We could run out of memory, maybe.
Guys, what do you mean by status body as value? That's like full body of the JSON which we get in from for status, or it's something else?
Yeah, it's operation body, and bulk UID body, it will be operation ID list.
Okay, good.
I think.
Yes, and also we have short and detailed. Do we store both into different, like into different keys, I would say?
Short details, it's just, I think, I would say it's not something new object. I mean, MySQL database. It's the same status object, but without some fields.
Yeah, I guess it's a serialized result. It's not there, and it's only
Yeah.
in them.
So
it's like a detailed status. It's full status, with unsetted some fields.
Right. So in Redis, do we store short status or detailed status, or both?
Point.
Full status.
I would say also maybe full, if there is a sense to have a short one in case if he already has a full info about it.
Then back to this concern, we can run out of memory if we try to filter. Like what we're discussing is that Redis does not correlate good with bulk API status search.
I think we probably need to look at unless someone knows it well enough off the top of their head, look at the Redis API and see if we can make it fit. I think we probably can, but it's obviously not like MySQL, is it, where we can do a query.
Okay,
just a question also we have, if we save in Redis, I mean, we have key value where we have UID and the value of the body, but the status search is mostly based on a status ID. What if we will use two different keys? One key will store the UID status only, like integer, like one value, and with another key we store also UID but a body. In this case, we can search by UIDs with a status, like make similar to two tables search.
Yeah. So these are, I think, the things that would need to be looked into, and then try and find a way to describe that so that, with the same interface, we could change Redis and put something else in the future. We need to.
But to begin with, this task should include like Redis save, actually not Redis, but key value save read operation.
Correct. Magento has no Redis support by default, or is Redis libraries?
It does have, but for cache only. Like you can configure that. You can configure cache to use Redis, and it will use Redis. But there is no interfaces to work with Redis.
Okay, then the question, what is Magento way usually? Magento would develop it like for Magento core, or will use some library?
Oh, we already have library to deal with Redis, like some Redis connection layer, and we should use that.
Okay.
But on top of that, put this interface for key value and have implementation which uses Redis, and then have implementation which uses database.
Okay, well, that's good. Just for info.
Also, regarding configuration, we should be able to switch between Redis and database somewhere in env.php. That's how we do it for a cache. So without changing actual XML files or any code, you should be able to deploy Magento, which uses Redis as persistence for key value. Okay, anything else to discuss here?
No, I guess for now that's fine. Maybe if the questions will pop up, we will do it next meeting, but for me now, fine.
Okay, anything to discuss for bulk API status search?
For me not.
It's currently in implementation, right?
Yeah.
Can you guys, just so I'm on the same page, because I think you guys discussed this maybe when I wasn't around, but can somebody give me just the most common use cases for this? Is this just going to be used for looking at, like, if you sent a bunch of async requests to, for example, create products, then you want to filter the statuses by, say, unsuccessful operations and then like retry those? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, generally the use case here is when we put in a lot of progress on Magento side, we really want to, I mean, we don't need honestly the success messages, but we definitely want to know which are failed and by which reasons.
Right.
And it will be just really nice to either send a call and tell, give me the success one or failed one. Yeah. Like
Is this mainly the thing? So the result code, right? Is that mainly the thing that you're going to be filtering by? Meaning, give me all failed messages in this time in the state range, or give me successes in the state range.
Yeah, correct.
Or what other things do you guys envision filtering by?
So maybe like if we create a whole lot of products, we also would want for all the successful responses, we would want to get the product feedback.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
And if we can do just one request to get more data, it just means that we're putting less traffic through the environment. This is all quite beneficial until we have webhooks, but then our system on the other side will start getting slammed.
Do we need to filter by date also? Like, do we pick by which field we filter?
Yeah, I mean, by date will be nice because if I'm looking for the failed entries, it's maybe entries like from the last year or like, 2 months ago. And I need like really to define that it was, for example, import was yesterday and then failed entries from yesterday.
Yeah, maybe in terms of fields, we might find it easier just to the ones that we use so that the key value implementation is easier. Unless, yeah, we find that it's actually going to be easy to just do everything somehow magically.
I just thought about one more maybe the feature. What about table cleanup? When operation status nice, if after 2 years of my running system I will go there, I guess the weight of this table will be really huge.
Doesn't it have cleanup right now?
Like I remember, it has.
It has. Oh, okay.
I think yeah. Since I saw some configuration setting for this.
Okay, good. Then I didn't know. That's good.
Okay. One more item I wanted to discuss, probably fast. We can talk more about that offline. Some architectural improvements for what we have right now, both in asynchronous operations and in bulk API, which was just implemented. First of all, there are a couple bugs due to like the way how we implement the consumers. Second, there are a couple improvements to the architecture of asynchronous operations. For example, we already discussed with Alex. I'll repeat here that topic right now mapped to the request, but we can easily map it to service contract, and it will allow us to then implement different clients which doesn't use web API. It uses just directly service contract name, sends the data, and write it to the queue by that. And for that manner, there can be a separate class which can invoke service contract and accept set of data and write it to the queue. So right now we write it by the topic, but not always client know about the topic. So sometimes client know just about the service contract. And we can have two different implementations, one synchronous, one asynchronous. And also a couple improvements on the mapping. First of all, customizable mapping from service contract to topic. So sometimes you want to control how topic are generated. You can have that mapping. I would say it's kind of a little bit lower priority feature, but it's just nice to have if possible. But then a little bit more important feature is to be able to customize the REST route for the bulk async APIs. So right now we generate them, removing some placeholders for parameters. Instead, we can provide XML file which allows us to actually code that endpoint. And next thing, it's important use case. Sometimes you do not want to send API request to write a synchronous operation to the queue, but you can write to the queue directly if you have some direct connection to RabbitMQ. But in that case, you don't have bulk ID, so it will be nice to have some web API endpoint, which allows you to generate bulk ID, and then you can create messages in the queue directly from the client to the queue. So it will allow to save some time on actually making API request, because API request processing requires to start Magento and do all the logic inside Magento. And also possible improvement to have different queues for service contracts which have status reporting and for those which don't have status reporting. So again, it can save some time if you still want to send bulk requests but do not want to waste time on saving the status. Fortunately, we don't have too much time to discuss it here, so let's discuss.
Maybe we can use ZenHub and just create the tickets out of them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. So we can again prioritize them or just take rather way.
Cool. Yeah, that will help. Then we will have like real tickets on which we can work on. Yeah, and proceed.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Thank you guys. See you next. Actually, no, we don't have a meeting next week. See you in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.